So what is communion? I think as many contemporary worship leaders approach communion, they're not always sure how to think about it, what to think about it, what to even say when they're in the midst of leading worship in the context of it. So I just want to do a brief rundown and look at 5 big ideas about communion that I think can help us understand its meaning, its impact, and why it's so vital to the local church that we're all connecting with it, including us as worship leaders. The first question is what is communion? Well, communion has gone by many other names across church history. The Great Thanksgiving. The word Eucharist means the giving of thanks. And then of course this word communion, which means the common union together. All in all, it comes back to this idea that communion is an embodied prayer. It's a way of reenacting the saving power of a past event, and you bring it into the future. That's actually the definition. It could be one of the definitions of a sacrament, to reenact the saving power of a past event, and by doing so, we access and connect with its power in the present. In theological terms, the word would be anamnesis. We're very viscerally reliving and remembering what has been done. So communion really is a physical way of praying and worshiping. You do it with bread, you do it with cup. It's highly participatory and it engages different senses of people. Now throughout the church, you're going to see that many different kinds and streams of churches experience the presence of God in different places. In my world, in the Vineyard, we're leading worship. We're experiencing the presence of God often in the music. In some traditions, they're really experiencing the presence of God in that communion or Eucharist moment. Others are experiencing it in fresh, powerful ways in the preaching, and they might put that above even the others. So just note that that's what communion is. Communion is 2 things. It's a flashback and a flash forward. So we're flashing back to what God has done in His self-giving, His self-offering, to see the power of sin and death broken in the individual's life and in our community life. And at the same time, there is this transforming process that the flashback tells us that Jesus' death and resurrection, which goes together, or these ideas go together, is about us being transformed into the likeness, the image of Christ in all of its fullness. So there's a flashback that happens from the point of communion in the service, and then there's a flash forward. Communion has always been for the church about the new creation, about the time to come, about when we break through this chrysalis and the church in all of its glory and individuals in all their glory, open up those butterfly wings of transformation. So it's a flashback in the service, it's a flash forward in that moment, and then it's a very physical prayer. And I like to think about it like this: a kiss exchanged between my wife and I. It says something more than words can say. In fact, if I began to involve a lot of words, it actually would cheapen the moment. There's something that kiss says. There's something that a hug says that's more than words can say. There's something that a handshake says. That's something that is more than words can say. So we can see that communion can be this physical prayer for people that involves their tasting, their drinking, their looking at one another, their singing together, them experiencing worship and the presence of God in a way that maybe the worship music side doesn't express in the same way, or give them an opportunity to be connected with the gospel with in the exact same way. So it's a physical prayer, and finally we can see the communion point in the service as the family table. It's where we recognize again that we are a we and not just a bunch of individual eyes on this journey. That we truly are in common union in our pursuit of Christ, and we're offering ourselves to His greater purposes once again. So that's communion, if you will, 101, and you can begin to integrate some of this language in your ways of praying about communion. In the scriptures you choose about communion, they can flash back and flash forward to the new creation. You can begin to talk about the family table and the we of the body. You can begin to talk about the unique way that this allows us to worship and help people refresh themselves on this fresh way of communing with God in a time of worship. So I hope this is helpful. Communion 101.